Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on updating our in-game menu to allow us to save data and handle player input. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be linked to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. Alright, so now we have our core functionality in place for our in-game menu. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on adding logic to change our color for our menu depending on the value that we set in our options data. And so to go ahead and do this, what we need to do is connect our menu to our data manager, and we want to go ahead and grab that selected value and then change our border and our main color for our canvas game object here. So to go ahead and do this, let's come back to our code, and we're going to go ahead and go into our menu class. We're going to come down to our create graphics method, and inside here, this is where we'll need to grab our data from our data manager. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new method to grab this data and then map it to the colors that we would like to use. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we'll make a new variable, and we're going to call this const, and we're going to do menu color. We're going to set it equal to this get menu colors from data manager. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and define this method. We'll come down to the bottom of our class. Let's add our private method. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to add our type for our return value. And for our returns, what this is going to be an object that has two properties on it. It's going to be the two colors for both our main and then our border colors. And so we'll add those properties. We'll do main, and we're going to make this a number, and then we'll go ahead and do border, and we're going to go ahead and make this a number. All right, and so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and grab our data from our data manager. So we're going to do const, and we're going to do chosen menu color, and we're going to set it equal to our data manager dot store dot get, and we'll use our data manager keys, and we want to go ahead and grab our options menu color. And then based on our menu color that was selected, we're going to go ahead and return the colors that we like to use. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and return an object for the time being with our default values that we had before. So we'll come back up to our create graphics method. Let's go ahead and copy our values here. And so for our fill style, that's going to be our main. And so we'll do main, we'll set it equal to that. And then we're going to have our border, and that's going to be equal to this line style here. And so we'll go ahead and set that on border. And then what we'll do is let's go ahead and come back up to our method, and we're going to go ahead and update our properties here. And so we'll have main color, we'll have menu color, main, then we'll have our menu color border. And so if we save, we're just going to do a quick test. If we open up our menu, we can see our color is still working properly. All right, so then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and define our color schemes that we want to use for our various menu options. And so to go ahead and do this, we're going to make a new file, and we're just going to do menu config.js. And inside here, we're going to go ahead and do export a const. We're going to call this menu color. And we're just going to do object.freeze. And so for our object, what we want to do is we're going to define keys that represent the option that'll come back from our data manager, and we're going to map that to our menu color options. And so what we'll do is we'll have 1 to an object, we'll have 2 object, and then we'll have 3, we'll have our object. And then what we'll do is let's copy this logic here. I'll come back to our menu config. Let's go ahead and place those in. And so for our colors, what we'll want to go ahead and do is if we select option 2, we're going to go ahead and do 0x324C3A. And for our border, it'll be 0x6DA87D. And for our third color, we'll do 0x38324C. And for our border, we'll do 0x796DA8. All right, then what we need to do is back in our menu, we just need to go ahead and reference our new configuration. And so what we'll do is we're just going to add a safeguard first if our chosen menu color is undefined. So if it wasn't in our data store for some reason, we're just going to go ahead and return menu color, and we'll go ahead and do our first option. Then we want to go ahead and do a switch, and we're going to go ahead and use our chosen menu color. And then based on the value we get back, so if it's 0, we're going to return our menu color 1, versus if it's like 1, 2, or 3, then we go ahead and increment that. So I'm just going to copy that. Let's go ahead and paste. And we're going to change this to 1, 2, and this will be 2 and 3. And then what we'll do is we'll add our default statement with our exhaustive guard. And we'll do our chose menu color. Oh, let's go ahead and change that to chosen menu color. And so we're just going to update that real quick. Let's get rid of our return since we won't need it. And then what we need to do real quick is we're just going to add our type for our chosen menu color. So we're going to do at type, and this is going to be our menu color options. All right, so if we want to go ahead and test, what we're going to go ahead and do is if we open up our menu, we should see our default colors. And then if we jump over to our preload scene, we'll go ahead and go to our options scene. And in our options scene, let's change our menu color to 2. So we have this green color. We're going to close. Come back to our world scene. Open our menu. Now we have our green looking menu. And let's go ahead and just test our last option to make sure everything works. And so we're going to have our purple color. We go ahead and close so we save. And we'll jump back to our world scene. And we can see we have our purple menu here. Alright, so now that we have our menu color being updated, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to update our title scene to go ahead and have the continue button, have us continue our game. And if we select new game, we're going to go ahead and reset our data and put our player back in their starting position. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and update our preload scene to take us to our title scene. And then in our code, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make a new method on our data manager. And this is going to be responsible for resetting the state of our game. And so what we're going to do is let's go ahead and come over to that class. And so we'll have our data manager. And what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and add a new method. And so we'll make a new public method. And we're going to call this start new game. And so for this method, basically what we want to do is we want to take all of our existing data and copy over things like our options data. So then that way we have like our menu colors, our text speed, if we skip animation. And we're going to want to reset our players data and things like our inventory later, our monster party, and things like that. And then that way it's back to our initial values. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to throw in a quick comment. We'll do get existing data before resetting all of the data so we can persist options data. And so to go ahead and make this happen, what we're going to do is make a new variable. We're going to call this existing data, and we're going to set it equal to a copy of this. We'll do our data manager, data to global state object. And then we want to go ahead and override some of the values. And so we'll have our existing data. And the first thing we're going to do is our player data. So we'll do player, and we'll do our position. We're going to set this equal to a copy of our initial state. And we'll grab player, and we're going to go ahead and grab position. Next, we'll want to update our direction as well. So I'm just going to copy this line of code. Let's go ahead and paste it. We're going to change this to direction. We don't need a copy an object since our position, since our direction is not an object, and we'll just do direction. And then what we want to do is we're going to need a mechanism to know when the player actually starts a new game. And so then that way we can enable this continue button based on that value. And so what we're going to do is let's come up to our type for our options, and we're going to make a new value. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add a Boolean property. So I'm just going to copy this here, I'm going to paste it, and we're going to call this game started, make that a Boolean. And then for our initial state, we're going to set that to false. So we'll have game started, and we'll have false. And then what we'll do is let's just add in our key for that value. And we're going to call this game started. And let's update that in our various locations. So down here, when we update our data manager, we'll have our data manager keys. Game started will be equal to our data, our game started property. And then down here where we set our values, we'll have game started, and that's going to be equal to this, our store dot get data manager keys, game started. So then let's come back up to our start new game method, and what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and set that value. So we'll have existing data dot game started equals our initial state dot game started. All right, so now that we have our existing data that we're going to want to persist after we reset our game, we need to clear out our phaser data manager. And so to do that, we can reference our phaser data manager and we can call the reset method. And what this is going to do is going to delete all of the data inside our data manager and make it so we can go ahead and start fresh. So after we reset that data, all we'll need to do is call our update data manager, pass in our existing data that we want to go ahead and set, and then that's going to go ahead and persist it, and then we're going to go ahead and call our save data method, so then that way we persist this to our browser storage. Alright, so now that we have our mechanism in our data manager for starting a new game, we just need to update our title scene to go ahead and use this new functionality. So what we're going to do is let's jump over to our title scene, and what we'll do is we'll come down to where we had our to-do for handling our saving and loading data. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and replace our to-do with a call to our new method, our start new game method in our data manager. So then for us to actually go ahead and enable our continue button, what we need to do is we need to set that new game started property in our data manager to true. So to go ahead and do this, we're going to go ahead and jump over to our world scene. And at the bottom of our create method, after we create our game objects, we have our camera fade in. We're going to go ahead and reference our data manager and grab our store. And we're going to set that game started property to true. So then that way, anytime we go into our world scene, we'll make sure that value is set to true so we'll know we actually started our game. So to go ahead and enable our continue button, we need to jump over to our title scene. And if we come up to the top of our create method, currently we have our is continue button enabled property on our class hard coded to false. And what we need to do is now we need to go ahead and reference our data manager and try to pull that property from there, and we'll default back to false if the value is not set. So now if we want to go ahead and test our changes, if we come back over to our game, let's go ahead and click on new game. And so if we go ahead and move our character around and we come into our menu to save our data, and once our progress has been saved, if we go ahead and refresh our game, we come back to our title scene, we should see that our continue button is now enabled. And if we click it, we should now be in the same position that we were before. And now if we go ahead and click on new game, and we go ahead and just refresh our scene, we should see that our continue option is now disabled because we didn't save our data after we started that new game. So one last thing we're going to do is we're going to do a minor refactoring to our code for where we transition to our world scene. So currently we had our logic structure, so we had each of our menu options and they go and do what they need to do. However, our new game and our continue options both start the same scene. The only thing that's different is we just need to call that data manager start new game. And so we're just going to go ahead and restructure this a bit. And so we're going to take our selected menu option for options and we're going to place that at the top. And then what we'll do is we're just going to go ahead and get rid of our code for our continue button. And what we'll do is we'll default to starting to our world scene. And then for our new game option, we're just going to go ahead and call our start new game method, but we won't return early. And then that way, no matter what other option we select, we'll go ahead and go right into our world scene. All right, with that actually brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our saving and loading section, and we're going to focus on starting to add in our monster data to our data manager. And so what we'll do is we'll start adding in the basis for having our party information stored there. So then that way we can pull that from our world scene and from the battle scene. So then that way we can start to persist things like as our monsters take damage or they level up. We'll have that data saved when the player wants to continue their game. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the police source code for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see some links on your screen now.